Is Andre Bright, Ikdame Burnout series. This is day 28 of the Mental Health Awareness Month. And every day I'm doing a live, which is around burnout. I'm an executive coach and I focus on helping people recover from burnout. And there's different aspects to it that I think are spoken about a lot, and there are different aspects to it that aren't spoken about a lot. Today, I'm going to be talking about the impact of art-based therapeutic approaches to healing burnout. One of the things I like to mention is that they say a picture paints 1,000 words. And one of the reasons why this is significant is because sometimes no words can describe how you feel, no matter how hard you try. There's going to be something you feel that you can't put into words, and then it comes out in different ways. It might be an expression, it might be a gesture, it might be a sound, it might be a color, it might be an animal or a song. So, for example, if I said there's a feeling, you hear that and you know exactly what that person feels or means when they make that sound, but there's not a word that can replace it. You just have to use that sound. In the same way that when we're feeling burnout, um, when you're feeling stressed for a prolonged period of time, when we feel like we've got too much on our shoulders, we might not be able to find the words. Might not be able to find the words. An example I often give is one of the words we use a lot in the English language is love, right? But love is used to describe all kinds of different things. The same word is used to describe how I feel about chocolate as how I feel about the person who's the most important person in my life, you know? In Greek, there'll be 7 different words for that love, depending on what you're talking about. But in English, we only really use the one. And although we have hundreds of thousands of words in the English language, we don't individually know each one to be able to find it and be able to use it to communicate to someone else how we feel. And so in the lack of that, we use other methods. The reason why this is important, when I'm working with a client who's struggling from burnout and I ask them how they feel, they may not be able to answer that question. And this happens a lot. And try it yourself. Like when you find yourself heavy or burden laden, if someone was to ask you how you feel, how often are you able to accurately describe that? You know? And so the question then is like, how can we? Because expressing how you feel is an important part of recovery. If you can communicate to someone else, you can let them know, one, you're in trouble, two, you're experiencing something that you're finding it difficult to control, for example. Three, you can show them whereabouts on that cycle that you might be, which stage you're experiencing at the moment. If you can't communicate that with someone, they can be frustrated, you can be frustrated, and that can add to the process. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why people might not communicate it to somebody else, because they can't find the words to express how they feel. But we do need to communicate it, because otherwise we stay alone. And that, like I've said before, continues that vicious cycle towards burnout. So today I'm looking at 5 arts-based therapeutic approaches to healing burnout. And so one of the things that I found interesting, culturally speaking anyway, we can kind of shun the arts in terms of its value in society. It's ironic because the arts are what we use to mark points in history. When you go back in time and want to know how people were living in the 1970s or the 1700s or 1496, we don't necessarily look at what inventions music was being played, what the clothes they were wearing, how they moved culturally, all these stuff based around the arts, what songs they were playing, what instruments they had, um, how they lived in groups. All these kind of things are influenced by the arts. If I want to know what's going on in a certain time in the pandemic or through certain war times or whatever, I'm going to be listening to the music that was made then, the books that came out, all that kind of stuff, because people express themselves through the arts. And arts is a tool to express yourself. If you don't have a relationship with that, you might find yourself struggling to express yourself. And that in itself can be a stress. So the 5 arts-based therapeutic approaches are: number 1, art therapy. the idea of painting. One of the things, painting, drawing, whatever it is using um, the idea of creating an image. And one of the things I think is important about arts-based therapy is that you are creating, you're in the mode of creating, which is, I think, an important part of the therapy. It's getting whatever is inside of you out. And in the moment of art-based therapy, I noticed during the pandemic there were these adult coloring books. So not necessarily adult coloring books, but coloring books designed for adults for meditation, for therapy, effectively. The idea that you can not necessarily shut off what's on the outside, but you can focus on something small. And just like breathing, just like uh, I don't know, other kinds of art-based therapies, it allows you to focus on something that's immediately in front of you, which can allow you to get yourself immersed in something else. And the process of that can allow you to give yourself time to heal from whatever else is going on in your life, right? And it lets the subconscious deal with the other things that are going on. So it provides creative expression, and it actually alleviates stress. You're in this mode when you're not thinking about the things that are might be going wrong in your life at that moment, and it's not necessarily ignoring it. But what I found, and I've spoken about this before, is when we have tens of thousands of thoughts going through our head every day, and with what 80-90% of those being negative, it actually serves us well to allow those thoughts to be quiet for a moment. And what we can do, how we can do that, is by being present. And painting, for example, is a great example of that. It can also promote self-discovery, where you find out about yourself. It's like, okay, cool, if I was to pick one of these colors to paint with, which one would I pick? Okay, I'm using dark colors right now. I wonder if that's a reflection of what's happening inside. Okay, I'm kind of drawn towards the yellow right now. Maybe I'm in a higher kind of state at the moment. Maybe you do this every day for the next month, and you have a look at it, put it up on your wall, and you realize there are certain days where you have certain types of colors or some kind of emotions that are coming out of those paintings. It's like, okay, what was happening around that day? Oh, that was the day I received my redundancy notice. Okay, that was the day that our child was born. Okay, that was the day that I had to put my last deposit down for the house, right? So then you can be like, okay, so that is what I was feeling, and it's manifesting itself in these colors, in these shapes, in these swirls or straight lines and edges, right? So it's important to use that as a therapy, because it allows us to step back and look at ourselves objectively from the outside and start to see patterns, right? What kind of colors am I drawn to? What kind of shapes? Am I always drawing these specific animals? And what do these animals mean? You know, all these kind of things are really good for us to find out what's going on individually, internally. The second arts-based therapeutic approach to healing burnout is music therapy. And this one we actually do without realizing it. Have you ever found yourself sad and wanting to cry and finding a song to encourage you to do that? Have you ever found yourself sad and wanting to get emotional, or go through the emotional process, and found a movie that always makes you cry or always gives you that emotion? And the reverse. Have you ever really felt excited and positive and find yourself going to a song that always feels like, oh my gosh, yeah, I love this. It changes my state each time. And the vice versa. Have you ever felt sad and tried to put on a positive song that always makes you feel positive, that brings that out in you? Yes, art therapy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is right up your street. This is all you. So the idea about this is finding music that resonates with how you're feeling at the moment, or either resonating with how you feel at the moment or how you want to feel. And the idea with that then is, are you allowing yourself to go through the emotions and you need help in doing that? Or are you trying to get to a state and you want to do that? One of the things as well about the art therapy is when you're creating it, music therapy is when you're creating it. So you're finding yourself addressing physical, emotional, cognitive, and social needs by doing that. Are you doing it in a group context? So am I going to a music class so I can create music and write and start to produce things? Am I using instruments? Are there certain instruments that have vibrations that are making me feel a certain way? Am I doing it in a group as opposed to on my own? Like, am I able to go to a concert, for example, for my favorite band that's in town? All these things are part of music therapy. Am I using it as a sound bath, for example, and I'm going to a place where they're using bowls to find certain frequencies to help me relax and allow the vibrations to leave, um, to resonate with the parts that are applying pressure internally for them to be able to leave and escape my body. So it's important to have a look at these things and not take them lightly, because imagine a world where you have no expression of how you feel. You might feel angry, tired, hurt, depressed, but then there's nothing that you can do to express it. Never mind deal with it. It's going to just add up and build up within our body, and that's when the physical manifestations of them happen. So art-based art therapy, music therapy. The third arts-based therapeutic approach to healing burnout is my side of things. This is what I do, and there's actually a charity called CIC, sorry, called Damali Beautiful Visions, and they specialize in helping heal those who are going through uh, bereavement of a small child, right? And so I do movement therapy classes for them. And what I found with that is that there are certain things that are trapped within the body that you have to let go of as well. There's different exercises we do. You might think of a word or think of a person and just allow yourself to move. You might find yourself little things like vibrating or jumping can agitate emotions within the body. They can either let them go or they can bring them up. Things like doing group dance work. What is connection, right? There's a style of movement called why has the name escaped me all of a sudden? Contact improvisation. So, and it's all about balance and allowing yourself to take the weight of someone else, and vice versa, allowing someone else to take the weight of you. Like, what does that look like for someone who's struggling to deal with a lack of support from their family, their friends, their colleagues? What does it look like to be in a space when you feel supported by someone else that you may not even know? Is that significant for you? Are there people in the space that you are connected with and who care about you and love you that you can do these exercises with, right? So dance movement therapy for me has been really powerful. There's the more I dive deep into it, the more I realize there's different ways of doing it that resonate with different kinds of people. And I tend to use movement therapy as opposed to dance therapy because people have a concept of dance. They start to think to themselves, am I going to be doing choreography like a K-pop star? No, you're not necessarily. No, you're not. There's other ways that you could do that, right? So what shapes bring out certain things in me when I'm moving, right? What happens when I'm still versus when I'm moving? Is that an element of it as well? How do I express it with my body? What my feelings look like? If I wasn't to use words and I was to try and communicate my emotion, how would my posture, how would my hand placement, how would those things reflect how I feel? If I was to hunch over, collapse my chest and keep my head down, what does that look like? Is that sadness? Is that me giving up? If I was to roll my shoulders back, chest out, chin up, does that give a completely different emotion to anybody, right? And then once you understand how these physical attributes, these physical shapes, these physical um, stances might affect your emotion, you might realize that actually some of these postures bring the emotions out of us. If I stay hunched over, if I stay with my head down, if I'm constantly looking at the floor, I tend to be heavier, right? If I roll my shoulders back, chest out, chin up, and I walk around like this, I might find myself feeling more confident. An example I always give is that there was one particular interview I went to, and in the lift, I had my arms up like this, and I'm in victory pose, and I'm like, ah, yeah, like things like tensing and relaxing the muscles, because sometimes you find yourself feeling heavy in the chest, your throat, your stomach. Actually, tensing and relaxing those can agitate that feeling in the body. You bring that while you're doing the victory pose, and you can release yourself of the tension, the stress that is in your body that's been building up on your bus, on your drive over, right? And then when you get to that space, then you feel yourself released. At least you don't have that pressure as you're walking into the room. Movement therapy is all of that, right? So it's really important to express it. So, and we do it as a child all the time. Like when you're sad or you're angry, you put on a song and you're just like, or that. There's a reason why we do that. And sometimes looking at children and seeing how they deal with things can teach us a lot about how we can deal with things. There's a lot of things that people do when they're young that we shun as we get older, and I don't think that serves us any favors at all. I think we actually lose out as a result of that, because then we stop finding ways to express ourselves. And children are fantastic at that. Um, Dance therapy, it promotes emotional, cognitive, physical, and social interaction, like I mentioned, but it also provides a non-verbal way for you to express and process your experiences around burnout. Because sometimes, like I said, words, you won't be able to find them, right? So that's art therapy, music therapy, and movement therapy. The fourth therapy that I wanted to talk about is drama therapy, and I actually have someone who is using this as an example as a right now. So there's different types of drama therapies, but it's a therapeutic technique that it uses theatrical activities, right? So role play, storytelling, for example, to explore your emotions and see what's going on. So, for example, there's theater. Why are names escaping me today? Forum theater, right? So forum theater is you create a story, and at any point in the story the audience can stop and they can say, okay, how else can we have dealt with that moment in the scene? And then you, as the audience member who brought up that topic, can come into the story and play the role and show them what it could look like if it was different. This is an example of taking control of the things that happen to you. So if you can imagine, there's a traumatic experience in your life, and you're going to relive it by doing this drama therapy. You explain the scene. This is what happens. This is the intention of each person during the scene. You find people within the role in the room to play it out as it happened, right? And then you talk about it. You go through it and you say, okay, cool. This is what's coming up for me. This is what happened. This is how I felt, etc. And then the question is, okay, what could have been different? Okay, let's play it again. Let's do a different example of this scene and see what comes out. Then you can find different ways, and you may realize that yourself there might have been fewer options that you thought. You might find that there were more options than you thought. Each of them will tell you something about the scenario. But then on your reflections, you might realize that actually right now I'm looking at this as if I'm a grown man, but at that time I was 5 years old. A 5-year-old wouldn't have the tools I have now to be able to express themselves, to be able to control the situation, to be able to navigate their own emotions emotionally, all these kind of things. And actually, I've got to look at it from the lens of who I was at that point. How would that person have dealt with it? And then you might realize that actually it wasn't your fault. Yeah, you don't have the control in that scenario, and there were certain bits of information that you were missing or didn't understand, and you felt like everything was on you. So drama therapy allows you to go through these motions and find out what else was up there. And you might find that by playing these scenes in different ways, different things might come up for you, right? One of the things that we do in therapy is the chair exercise. So not therapy, in coaching, is the chair exercise. So if there's a conversation that you need to have with your manager, with your spouse, with your friend, family member, or someone within the community, we say, okay, cool. We're going to have 2 chairs facing each other. And I want you to sit in your chair, and I want you to imagine the other person is sitting in the opposite chair. and I want you to tell them everything you need. Just get it off your chest, completely not hindered by any kind of restriction. And then you let it out. It's your outlet, your expression. You say everything you need to do, lay it out bare. Say, you can shout, you can scream if you want, you can do whatever you need to, and you can just let it out, right? And once you finish, you switch chairs. Now you're in the seat of the other person, and you got to put yourself in their shoes as the person who's receiving this information, and you wonder yourself, what would they say in return? This is a powerful element of this dramatic therapeutic approach that we actually use in coaching, because it means that you might realize that if you're in that person's shoes, they might tell you something that, or that might reveal something that you hadn't necessarily considered. So, for example, if you put yourself in the shoes of your employer, and you're going through a lot of stress at work, and you do that exercise, you've just told them that you're stressed, you're under it, like, your other team members aren't helping you out, you're doing this on your own, you're trained enough to be able to do this task to the level it's needed, and you don't feel supported by your line manager, all this kind of stuff. You get it all out, then you sit on the opposite chair, and you might realize that when you're sitting in the opposite chair, things that you hadn't have noticed might come up. You suddenly remember that they told you about the things that are happening in their household. You remember that they told you about the struggles that they're having trying to get this company off the ground. You might realize that there's something that's happening, that they are a specific culture or demographic that is, and there's something going on in the world that is related to that specific demographic as well. So they might be struggling with that. And then you start to feel empathetic towards their side, which can help relieve the stress of what you're feeling. Because sometimes it's not about giving them a carte blanche and saying, okay, cool, whatever you do is okay. You felt like this in that moment. It's not about that. But the fact that you understand where they're coming from and where that emotion is can sometimes relieve the stress. Part of the stress of feeling attacked, for example, is that we don't understand why people are treating us that way. At least if we understand why, we can understand why. And then we can say, okay, cool, I don't feel that bad anymore. I now know that this has nothing to do with me. The way they snapped at me in the meeting room is not because I'm insufficient. It's not because I did something bad. It's just because they had no other way of expressing themselves, and they were going through something, and they just happened to let it out on the first person that's around them, and I'm around them the most. And so I got the blunt of it. I don't agree with it, but at least I know why now. And then you can deal with it, because then you can go back to them the next day and you can say, you know what? I realize you're going through a lot. And I want to talk about what happened yesterday to find a different way that we can find ways for you to express yourself, which doesn't then challenge my authority within the room, the authority of which you gave me by putting me in this position within the team, right? So going through the motions as drama therapy can help you do that. And it can gain insight into your personal challenges. What are you really going through right now? But it also gives you a creative outlet to work through it, right? And it can actually allow you to bring that stress to the surface so you can deal with it. Part of the reason why people are scared to do therapy in general, and I hear this a lot, same with coaching actually, is they're like, oh, but I don't want to open a can of worms. The worms are already in the can. Okay, the worms are already in the can. Do you want them to stay in the can, rotting within you, or do you want to let them out so you can see what worms are there and you can get rid of them, right? The longer you wait to deal with what's going on internally, the longer it's going to fester within you. It only gets worse when it's not dealt with. And I know we're trying to avoid the pain of dealing with whatever's inside, but we'll never get past it unless we do. One of the things that happens that we see a lot is that people think that they've dealt with something just because they're not talking about it or going over it in their head anymore until the next trigger happens. Someone says something which reminds you of that thing, or someone does something, or you hear that song, or you see that movie you used to watch together. And then you realize that all your emotions that were 10 years old that you never really dealt with are suddenly at the surface again. You're feeling exactly how you were at the time, but it's like 5 years have gone. And then you wonder why. It's because you haven't dealt with it. And some of the ways to deal with it is through art therapy, music therapy, movement therapy, drama therapy. The fifth way of dealing with it, which is actually done quite a lot in terms of the wellness space, is expressive writing therapy. It's creative writing. It is bullet pointing and brainstorming, getting things from your internally out onto paper and just writing it out and seeing what you find. Okay, so it encourages you to write about your thoughts, feelings, and experiences relating to burnout, and it provokes self-reflection. So one of the things that I found with expressive writing and creative writing and journaling is that there is a point similar to dance for me, and I said this, excuse me, in a class I was teaching yesterday, that when it comes to freestyling with dance, there's usually a couple of minutes at the beginning when you're still thinking. You're like, what best move I can do? What is the technique here? All that kind of stuff. After about 2 minutes of dancing, you start to forget about that kind of stuff and you're just moving. And that's when the magic happens. That's what happens. How you feel comes out in how you move naturally. And it's the same with expressive writing for me. At the beginning, when I started writing, it's usually just what is at the top of my mind. And it can be very logical, it can be very formative. But after a while, I stop thinking and I just start writing and go into almost like a trance state. 4 or 5 pages later, I'm like, oh snap, I've been writing for a while. What have I been writing? You don't even realize you're not even consciously writing. And that's when the real good stuff comes through, because then your subconscious has been writing that time. And what we find is a lot of the answers are within our subconscious, but they're not within our consciousness. So that might look like you've been going through a lot recently, but because you've been trying to look okay and be strong for everyone, you haven't dealt with what's on the inside. And that's pushed down into your subconscious. And now all that stuff that you've been pushing down has come to right. It might look like you've gone through trauma, or you've been disappointed by someone, or you feel resentful towards someone and you haven't expressed it to them, so you feel like you've let yourself down. And then all of a sudden you're reading this on paper and it's like someone else has written it, but it resonates with you. That's because that's your subconscious. It has noticed things about you and the way you've dealt with yourself and other people that you haven't consciously noticed yourself, or you've been trying to ignore all this time. And now when you're writing, you can't ignore it anymore. So expressive writing is really important for that, because it allows you to bring up everything. And I know I said a picture paints 1,000 words and you can't always find the words. And that's often because we're consciously trying to think about what it is. When you get into the subconscious by writing, just free form for a while, it allows your subconscious to do the hard work for you. But then what's important is a lot of people sometimes just write and then they put it away. Okay, cool. I've got it out on paper and I get it away. One of the things some people do is burn that piece of paper, right? You've expressed it, you let it out and burn it. An example of this is when I've been at work, there's been a few times where I've had to do a certain drafts of an email. The first draft is me just writing, getting it out. So I feel like I've done that part. And I've this is me almost speaking to myself. This is like, okay, I've been wronged. This is what happened. This is my version. I'm going to put it out on paper and just let it out. And then I can choose to either leave it in my inbox or delete it, or burn it if I've written it, or whatever that is, right? But then after that, then I can go to refining it if I want to actually send that email, right? But at least then I've got it out. Because what ends up happening is if we refine it while we're writing it, then it means that we're not being true to ourselves a lot of the time. We're filtering the truth to pander to someone else's emotions, which we're deciding how they would feel. If you think about it, if I'm trying to be nice or trying to dumb down what I'm saying to to be kind to someone else, to be nice to someone else, then it means that I'm doing the work for them. I'm not giving them the opportunity to say, actually, no, I can handle the truth. Actually, no, I need the truth. And I actually prefer when you do tell me the truth, because often it means that you're going around harboring these feelings and I have no idea you're harboring them against me. I would rather you just tell me. We do this a lot, and we actually self-sabotage ourselves because we're actually just scared to express how we actually feel to ourselves or to other people. So expressive writing is really important to do that, where especially during burnout, because we really may not realize that it's not about the tasks. It's not the tasks in this moment that's keeping me this way. Any of the tasks I can do, you know, I may have a lot of them to do. Sometimes it might be about, what is it about my concept of self that keeps accepting more work? What is it about my concept of self that keeps deciding that I'm going to be the savior in everyone's life and I'm taking on too much stress or burden from other people? What is it about me that is continuously um, perpetuating the idea that I need to be doing everything for everyone? Sorry, let me. Yeah, what is it about me that's being that person for everyone at my own expense, right? So these are all things to be considering when you're looking at therapy. So those are the 5 art-based therapeutic approaches to healing burnout. Recap over them. 1, art therapy, painting, colors, um, shapes, those kind of things. Music therapy. Is it a sound bath? Is it listening to your favorite song or something that's going to bring up an emotion within you or the emotion that you want to feel? Movement therapy. Is there something that's in you? Like, is there a vibration or something you need to let loose? Do you need to just dance it out and be exhausted before you can heal? Drama therapy. Do you need to play out some of the things that happened and try and find the different ways that you could have approached it, or doing it in such a way that by experiencing it with other people, you can find yourself feeling seen and heard? Expressive writing therapy. Are you allowing your subconscious to come to the consciousness and just write out how you feel and express it, so you're not harboring stuff and you're actually letting it out instead of keeping it in, and right? So those are 5 art-based therapeutic approaches to healing burnout, and I encourage you to actually use these and take them seriously. Give them an opportunity to help heal you. When words are failing you, these things can step in. All right. And if you need help with that, if this is something where you're like, oh, I'm actually considering this, and it might be worth me looking at some of these exercises that maybe it might be worth trying this out, because there's something that I'm not being able to find the words for. And maybe some kind of arts-based therapy will allow me to express that and let it out, because I'm realizing that keeping it trapped in is killing me. Right? Then get involved. The QR code on LinkedIn and YouTube is here and here, and you can book a 30-minute call with me. On Instagram, just DM me, and a few of you have done that before already, so I'll be getting back to you today and tomorrow. And that 30 minutes, we're just going to have a brief discussion, a brief conversation about what you're going through and what I can help with. I offer programs, resources, drop-in sessions where we can go through these with different exercises. Just think to yourself, you've been holding something in for the last weeks, months, years that you haven't been able to deal with. What if art therapy is one of the things that will help you do that? What if that will bring to the surface something that you've been holding back that you don't even realize that you're dealing with? Maybe it's not about the thing that you think it's about. And maybe art therapy is going to help you get to the bottom of it, right? For whatever method you choose, on the other side of that is a healed version of you. And that healed version of you will be able to allow different things into their life. It will be able to set different boundaries, create a different experience. And that different version of you is going to be free from burnout. Is that not worth looking into this? Get on that call, book a call with me, and let's talk about it. My whole thing is that I've experienced all this before. Everything I'm talking about is stuff that I've tried and I've seen the results in, but I've also researched. I know the data behind it. I know that people provide very niche versions of some of this stuff, but it's all valid and it's all useful. And just give it a try if you don't believe me. Honestly, give it a try. If you're feeling burnt out, try painting, try it, try music, put on that song, try movement, try drama, try and act it out, right? Try writing without restraint and see what it does for you. Just give it a go. And if you need some professional help, someone to help guide you through the process, give me a call as well. DM me. Let's set up a call and I can see what I can do. Tomorrow, there's going to be another version of this on the 29th of May. There's only a few days left of Mental Health Awareness Month. So after that, I'm going to go back to regular programming. So if you want to keep in touch, then do that. If you want to book the call, DM me or hit the link in the comments in the description, and then we'll get on the call. We'll help you get through all this.